Hi, my name is Ashley Foster. So, I'm doing this video to talk about my research paper. And my research question, I wanted to know if I allowed my children, my students, to practice on IXL for at least 20 minutes a day, would it improve their fast fact fluency quiz scores for multiplication? So let's get started. I teach third grade in Pensacola, Florida. The school that I teach at is a C school, which means it's not necessarily high ranking, but it's not the lowest of the low. My classroom is made up of 17 students. They vary in academic ability. Some are very high, some are very low. I have two that are very low. They are ESC students. Every 9 weeks, we have to give fact fluency quizzes, and the students get 1 minute to complete 10 problems. The test looks a little bit like this. Well, it is this. And we sometimes they are mixed up, and they're mixed all the way up from 1 to 12, and sometimes they're just like this test right here. It's just the tens family. It's probably backwards. But there are 10 questions there, and they have 3 minutes to solve 10 questions. I give my students 3 minutes because I think you should be able to know that 10 times 5 is 50, 10 times 4 is 40, 10 times 6 is 60, and so on and so forth. So, we also have a math application, and it is called IXL. Previously, I have used MobyMax for computer assisted instruction, and I really liked it because I was able to do prescriptive measures in MobyMax for my students. With IXL, the school purchased a subscription of it. We have to use it. I wanted to do my research on it because I need to see if it's actually effective. Last year when I was at my other school, we did MobyMax, and MobyMax was so thorough. We had reading and writing and math. I mean, it was very thorough. If you were to go into language arts with MobyMax, we had a whole thing called Reading Trio where you read, you wrote, and you did phonics. It was amazing. So with IXL, it's not necessarily as prescriptive as MobyMax. With IXL, the kids are really free to work on whatever skill they want. Where in IXL, in IXL, the kids are free to work on whatever skill they want. However, in MobyMax, I was able to select what they could work on and what they could not work on, which I really liked about that program. So IXL is mandatory. We have to do it. It's not necessarily something that we have to do every day, but we have to do it weekly. They do check our records to make sure we are doing IXL. So for my research, I decided to use IXL to determine whether or not my children were going to score higher on their fact fluency exams. So the reason why I wanted to do this is because I wanted to be able to present this information to my AP in regards to this program. I would definitely like for our school to switch to MobyMax, but I have to have some type of foundation for why I feel like we should do that. And so I did decide to use this program for my action research. Okay. I started by making sure the kids had 20 minutes every day to practice. And I did this in my rotational centers. So my math block is set up where I give 30 minutes of direct instruction. We do guided practice, and then we do one activity on our own. So after the 30 minutes of instruction, we then move into small group, and we rotate 20 minutes at each station. So for 20 minutes, they are doing fact fluency with IXL. Another 20 minutes, they are working on manipulatives. And then they're at the teacher table, which is my table, for 20 minutes. And then they are working on a practice by themselves. So there's 4 stations. The biggest limitation that I had with doing this particular experiment was time. Sometimes I would have to stop what I was doing and remediate the whole entire class on a math concept. And so that would take away time. So math would sometimes run 10 minutes over. So I didn't always get a chance to teach the whole concept. I knew that my students had to do this 20 minutes. So that was the biggest limitation. The other limitation that I had to this research was not having enough time to really see if IXL had an effect on my students' scores. Because in order for me to do it, I would have to implement it for at least a semester. And I've really only had 8 weeks, give 6 weeks, give or take, for my students to be able to get into the program, actually do the program, and actually take the fast fact fluency test for me to see. Another thing that I did to see how effective working in IXL would be was I did check my scores for STARS 360. We take a STARS 360 exam every quarter. I had just given one prior to the beginning of this semester, and so I was going to compare my scores of this semester with my scores from last semester to see if using this program would actually influence my scores. So I did that 20 minutes a day. Every student did it. I didn't have a hard time getting them to do it because they really do like working in IXL. And a lot of times I use it as a reward. And not only did they do it for that 20 minutes, but they would also do IXL when they were finishing up an assignment. They would go into their computer and they would work in IXL. So I did not have a hard time getting them to actually do the research. Now, at the end of my project, I did find that it had no real effect on my fast fact fluencies. Previously, before I began to use this app, I would use rote memorization, in which they just would copy their multiplication tables. That's the way I learned it, and I thought maybe that would be the best way for them to learn it. And it works. You know, rote memorization works. Honestly, with doing fact fluency on IXL, it's really the same thing as if I were to just be holding up flashcards, because it's basically just flashcards in a nutshell. I didn't see any increase on my STAR 360 scores. I mean, every student made gains, but they didn't make that benchmark where they needed to go. And you can see that in the appendix. As far as my fact fluency, they all seem to have no improvement. Like it made no bearings on whether or not they were going to do well. I have students who I know is going to do well because I know that they know their multiplication tables. And then I have some students who know some, where they may know their 2s and they may know their 3s and 5s and 10s, but they may have trouble with the 7s and 8s. So I really don't think that using that program had any bearing on their scores. It didn't have any influence on the scores. Going forward, I would like to continue to use this program, possibly